Okay, Professor Warwick, the declaration emphasizes on fairness, justice, and multilateralism. Even in the recent SCO summit in Tianjin, the member states also decided to establish different institutions. So do you think is it the reflection of the institutionalization of SCO and to effort to institutionalize a multipolar world in order to, in contrast to the Western-led initiatives?
Yeah, what you see with the emergence of these sorts of institutions, such as the proposal around a new development bank for the SCO, is the establishment of a multi-layered network or a fabric of international relationships that are bilateral and multilateral in nature, often with overlapping memberships. And that creates, I think, a very robust and resilient system of interstate relationships because it has many dimensions. So if we think of the evolution of these institutions really like the way a piece of fabric comes into existence, we start with single threads. And single threads that connect two points are actually quite weak and fragile. They can easily be cut. And then we weave more threads together, and the threads become thicker and stronger. And then we start to overlay the different threads together, ultimately to form a fabric. So a fabric made up of many fine threads is actually incredibly strong. And these sorts of multipolar institutions, I think, can be thought of really as the emergence of a mesh network or a fabric of institutions that complement the United Nations at the heart, but which gives the United Nations the practical mechanisms by which its original ambitions around individual national sovereignty, fairness, and equality of nations can actually be implemented. And that, I think, is the kind of thing that we are starting to see consolidate as a result of the declarations coming out of the SCO summit in Tianjin, and of course, amplified in a very material sense by the victory parade that took place in Beijing on the 3rd of September.
So, Professor, do you think so that the SEO, especially after the Tianjin summit, is evolving into a genuine Eurasian security and governance architecture, something that could counterbalance Western-led institutions?
Well, I think it offers an alternative way of doing business to start with. So you've got to think of the SCO as an institution that hasn't been set up in the image of Western institutions, meaning that it's not set up as a block against other groups of countries. It was actually set up originally to facilitate
Yeah.
more effective coordination between countries in tackling issues of extremism and terrorism. And of course, in doing so, the relationships of coordination and collaboration on these issues has deepened, and the membership has expanded over time as the practical effects of this kind of coordination have become felt. And so more organizations or more governments want to become involved because of the successes of the SCO in helping participant members address issues of domestic instability, terrorism, and extremism. Now, on the basis of what was historically quite a narrow set of focuses, the SEO has progressively introduced broader ideas of security. So we've gone from a narrow concern around terrorism and extremism, for example, to one that takes into account
Yeah.
the fact that economic development is a pivotal component of security broadly understood. And so the SCO became a forum that facilitated greater interconnectivity through energy projects and transport projects in particular. And these, of course, create interdependencies amongst participating countries that gives them a focal point. In other words, even when there are differences, there are strong common interests that compel the member states to recognize that they need to find ways of resolving differences that progress common purpose and which don't undermine the benefits that they've achieved by working together. And in that sense, it is a balancing system because it balances the tensions that can exist between states, whether it's over borders or whether it's over other issues, to balance it against the benefits that they're getting from enhanced economic connectivity, enhanced living standards for people in each state. And because of that, it creates the mechanisms by which differences are either managed, put to one side, or at least have ways of dealing with them through dialogue so that they don't spill over into conflict or into kinetic reactions domestically or amongst states. And that in and of itself, I think, is a really quite a significant transformation in the global setup because it actually sends a clear signal that interstate relationships can be undertaken in ways whereby differences can coexist with common objectives, where tensions don't undermine opportunities, and where opportunities are leveraged as ways of addressing tensions. And that's a very sophisticated and nuanced approach, both at a behavioral level but also at an institutional design level.